In September of 2011, I was on a solo scouting trip for elk. I was scouting the Beaver unit in a big drainage between Beaver and Circleville because my dad had the points to draw his limited entry tag for muzzleloader elk the following year, and I wanted to learn the area before he burned his points on the unit. Super smart. I would have been 38 years old at the time. I am very accustomed to being alone in the mountains for days at a time. On my second day of scouting, I was hiking in on a game trail and was a couple miles from my truck. Getting into the area, I wanted to be there for the evening. I was on a game trail in a thick area when I came across one of those three-wheeled bicycle tire strollers. It was about 10 yards off the trail, and I remember thinking how strange out of place it was. From any direction, it would have been challenging to get it to where it was. You would have had to have lifted it over a lot of deadfall stands and bushwhacked with it. This was a game trail in the middle of nowhere. Not thinking, I walked up to it and looked around to see if anybody was there. I didn't see anyone. I didn't call out or anything, although I remember thinking it didn't look abandoned. It wasn't dusty and it hadn't been rained on. There was a little clearing nearby, but again, didn't see anyone. I looked into the stroller to check out what was in there. There was a jar of peanut butter. I opened it and there was a fresh finger mark that you could tell somebody scooped out peanut butter and eaten it. There was an open box of crackers. My thoughts went to that. It must be a homeless person or something. There was a map of the Manti-LaSalle Range, Skyline Drive area north of where I was. There were matches and a flashlight. Were a couple clothing items, a green hoodie, a pair of socks, and gloves, if I recall correctly. I have no idea why I was rummaging through this stuff other than everything seemed so out of place. All of a sudden, I looked up and a fear came over me like I was being watched. I can't describe it. It almost paralyzed me to where I couldn't just run. I backed away from it and started walking back down the trail where I'd come from. I kept turning in all directions to make sure no one was following me from any direction. As soon as I was about 100 yards away from the stroller and down the thick trail, I pulled out my GPS and marked my location. And then literally just started running towards my truck. I did not have any kind of weapon or sidearm with me, just my day pack with water and my normal hunting stuff. I ran and hiked fast all the way back to my truck, looking behind me to make sure I wasn't being followed. Once I was in my truck, I felt safe. I left that area and drove straight into town, losing the evening scouting, which I would normally never have done. I started thinking my mind was just playing with me and I'd overreacted. I would normally never have missed that. I started thinking my mind was just playing with me and I'd overreacted, but while I was driving, I thought about how there were cabins about a mile above the area where I had come across the stroller. Who in their right mind would have hauled that stroller into there? It was steep, thick, up towards the cabins. That was the first time I thought of the mountain man I had heard about in the news. I thought to myself, could I have just encountered the mountain man? I decided to call the local police when I got to town. I explained to dispatch that answered the phone what had happened. I was expecting them to take my info, but wasn't expecting the urgency they gave it. She had me repeat what general area the incident happened, and then she said, "Do not hang up. I am getting the sheriff on the line." The sheriff joined the call and asked me to share the story, and we went through everything in great detail. The sheriff asked lots of questions and was very grateful I had GPS coordinates, which I gave to him. I could tell they were very interested in every detail. They took my info, and I felt grateful that I had called. I spent a lot of time hunting solo, and never before or since have I felt that intense feeling of being watched like I was that day. I was rattled enough that I moved 30 miles north to the complete other end of the unit and finished my scouting trip the next day. Ended up coming home a day early, which again, you can tell. Because if you're going up on a scouting trip and you cut it early.
A lot of details as to how serious this
I
must
never
be.
did hear back from the sheriff or anyone else about the incident, but I 100% believe that I had an encounter with the infamous Utah mountain man before he was caught. I followed the story intently until he was caught, and he did pass through that region of the state more than once.